You're listening to the Better Two podcast with DM Needham. Hi gang, Donna here. Thanks for tuning into the Better Two podcast. Today I had the pleasure of interviewing Bongai Mhloyl. She runs the organization, the American African Youth Leadership Foundation. This foundation is to stop child marriages in Zimbabwe at this time, but she also does some work for outreach in the United States as well. And that is to help girls with etiquette and learning social graces, as well as giving them some, dare I say, mom time. So we look at not only child marriages, but kind of the root of why we have child marriages in Zimbabwe and other places in the world. We discuss different cultures and how the feminine woman is not necessarily rated very high, and how we need to make changes about those things. So I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Bongai. How are you doing?
I am great. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing pretty good. It's actually about noon here. So, and where you're at, it's what,
Yeah,
seven
yeah, yeah.
o'clock?
Yes, it's 7 o'clock here in Zimbabwe. Yeah, I just assume everybody's in my time zone.
So, why are you're originally from Zimbabwe, but you are currently you're visiting Zimbabwe, but you also
Yes.
reside in the United States, correct?
Yes, yes, yes. So in the United States, I live in a small town in Gap. It's called Gap, PA. It's in Pennsylvania, and it's in Lancaster County. If people know where Lancaster County is, that's where it's a small town in Gap. Yeah.
Okay. So, you grew up in Zimbabwe. What
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about growing up in Zimbabwe.
Okay, so yeah, I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. My mother and my father, we were 11 in our family. We were a big family. So I grew up in a big family, eight sisters and three brothers. So you can imagine I'm the fourth of 11 children. And it was chaos, but it was, real good. I'm used to big families. And, yeah, so I just grew up with my sisters and my brothers. And although we were not like considered rich people, we were also not poor people. We were like really family full of love. Although we were like a large family, but there was a lot of love as well. So,
How did you end up in Pennsylvania?
oh my gosh, it's a long story.
We
So,
got time.
growing up, So after I finished high school, I went to live with my aunt in the capital city of Zimbabwe, which is Harare, and my brother lived there. So I went and stayed with my aunt, and sometimes I'll visit my brother in a separate town, but not too far from where I was with my aunt. And my brother had a friend, and I met my husband at my brother's house. They were best friends. They are still best friends. They're actually together right now. Um, so I met my husband there, but my husband's family, almost his family, his brothers, his sisters were already in United States going to school, and some of them were already doing their doctorate degrees. My one brother-in-law and his wife, they were finishing their doctorate degrees at Penn State University, I think. Yeah. And then his sister was in Texas, and his other sister was also in Pennsylvania. So anyway, my brother went to, his brothers arranged for him to come to school also, but we were already married, and we actually had our first son then. So my husband went first, and I stayed for a few months trying to figure out where our son will stay, and I left him with my mother, and I also followed my husband like a year later, and we ended up in Pennsylvania going to school. I went to Cheney, Pennsylvania, and Westchester University. So did my husband, but my husband did his master's degree at uh, what is it? Philadelphia College of Textiles. He did computer science. So that's how I ended up in the United States through my husband, who got there through his family, and I also got there through him. And this was in 1985. And so the idea for both of us was after we finish our bachelor's degree, well, maybe we'll do our master's degrees and we come right back home to Zimbabwe. We did, but right after graduation, my husband got a job with QVC as a computer programmer. And we said, oh, we'll work for maybe a couple of years and save some money so we can go back to Zimbabwe. But the long story is, he ended up working there for 30 years. He just retired. He just retired last year, 2020. So yeah, but we kept, coming back and forth to visit our families here in Zimbabwe. Yeah.
Did you ever, when did you get to bring your son over, or did you?
Okay, so when I was finishing my bachelor's degree, I arranged my mother-in-law to bring my son. So she did, I graduated in 1990. Aging myself here. But so she brought him and she stayed for a year and she went back to Zimbabwe. But my son stayed. And I also had a second son then in 1990. My second son was born there after I finished school.
Nice. So one of the things that you're now in charge of an organization, you run an organization, and
Yeah.
we talked a little bit before we got online about the
Yeah.
fact that this was something you witnessed in your family. So tell us about the organization that you run.
Okay, so my organization is called American and African Youth Leadership Foundation, and then I put a slash end child marriages. So I named it that the American and African. I'm not saying African American because a lot of people will ask me that, but it's American because I also work with American kids in my Pennsylvania home, but my work is mostly here in Zimbabwe, which is the African part. And the end child marriage, part of it is really what it is, what it says. We end child marriages by empowering these vulnerable girls and keep them in school. So what happens is that in some parts of the country, thank God it's not the whole country, but in some parts of the country that are still a little bit backwards, they are still marrying off their daughters to much older men. For example, when I grew up, the girl that was married off to my grandfather, which is what I witnessed in my family, she was 12 and my grandfather was 75. And she ended up in that situation because my grandfather gave her parents 10 cows, just 10 cows. That's what she was worth, according to them. So she came and she was just miserable. And as I grew up and I got married and I went to school, I went to United States, that girl that I witnessed, she never left my heart and she never left my mind. I kept thinking about her, although she ran away 2 years later, but there were still a lot of girls that were in that similar situation. So I just wanted to do something about it. That's when in 2010 I registered my nonprofit as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and I started raising funds and give scholarships to these girls so that they can stay in school, they can continue on with what they like to do, and so that's how I got started, and I'm still doing it up to today.
And some of the information that I read, so there's orphanages that kind of do this as well. They kind of,
Yeah.
they end up saying they'll let an older man come in and adopt a girl. And do they understand? Are they well aware of what's going on? That they're just going, okay, it's fine.
So these old men, they're not really adopting the girl.
Okay.
She is getting married off to these old men by her parents, by her father mostly, because the mothers, they really don't want this to happen because most of these mothers to these girls, they are also child brides. They were also married as children. So they know what they went through as young wives. So they don't want their daughters to go through the same thing. So what they try to do is they try by all means to do whatever it takes to keep their girls at home and at school. And if they see that the husband is trying to marry the girl off, they will even get to an extent where they will arrange for the girl to run away. But the fathers, they still have that cultural belief that girls, as soon as you turn puberty, you just have to get married, and I get something out of you because as time goes on, you are going to get married anyway and leave the family. So he will not even think about sending her to school, but he will continue to educate the boy because in his mind, he's thinking that the boy will stay at home and continue on with the family name, whereas the girl will get married and go to somebody else's family. So she might as well go now, and I get something out of it. In my grandfather's case, her father got 10 cows from my grandfather. So that's what, she was worth. But it's not like they're adopting the girl. No, it's just a terrible situation. Yeah.
I just didn't know that if the girls that were in orphanages are also subject to these things. And
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because they are so vulnerable because they might be in the orphanage because they are orphans, they don't have their parents. I have some of the girls that are in my program. They might have been placed with a family member, maybe an uncle or a distant, family member who will kind of adopt them, but they will go through abuse, all kind of abuse, and still the whoever is the father figure will can still marry them off. So although they adopt them, but it's still not the same. They don't get the same rights as somebody who is growing up with their fathers, their mothers that are not practicing these cultural beliefs. So they are still vulnerable, very vulnerable.
you said you do some work in the United States. What exactly are you doing in the United States? I mean, are you dealing with the same kind of situation or similar situation? I don't want to say same kind because there are certain laws. I mean, there are some states that
Right.
minors.
Yes, yes. So in the United States, what I do is I teach etiquette and social graces. I still empower these girls through education, but in the United States, I focus mainly on teaching them life skills, leadership skills, etiquette, social graces, so that when they grow up, they know how to conduct themselves. They know how to carry themselves as young ladies. They know how to see. They know how to walk. They know dining etiquette. We teach dining etiquette. We also teach business etiquette so that when they go for a job interview, they know how to conduct a job interview with the prospect employer. So that's what I teach in the United States.
Which I think is a worthwhile thing because I had a conversation with my uncle, I guess a few years ago. I had posted something on
Okay.
Facebook about families, that
Yeah.
children should learn how to garden in school. They should be taught how to do
Yep.
this. And my uncle's like, no, that's for the family to do. And families don't
Yeah.
have the luxury of time to be able to teach social
Yeah.
graces, and they may not have
Absolutely.
the knowledge or on etiquette.
Yep. Yes, yes, you are so right. It's the same as the etiquette because people are so busy. I know because sometimes I don't have time to sit down with my family and eat as a family. So people these days they are running. The father is running out this way, the mother is running out that way. Kids may be sitting, in front of the TV eating. Nobody, and they don't teach etiquette in schools anymore. So if we don't teach them, they are not going to know. So, although they don't sit every day at a dinner table with the families, but when I teach them, I say at least once a week, even if your parents are busy, you do set the table, call them to come and sit at the table. And if they don't know, because some don't know, just teach them what to learn, and they can also learn. And as you keep practicing and doing it, it becomes a norm. You might say, okay, every Wednesday is our family dinner night, and everybody sits at the dining table, and everybody is together, and they follow the rule of dining etiquette, and they like it, they enjoy it.
Well, I mean, growing up, we used
Yeah.
to have Sunday dinner. I mean, that was the thing. It was
Yeah.
the thing. And
Yeah.
now you don't
Yeah.
have the family
Yeah.
structure that you used to.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So
So
as you're
yes.
as you're dealing with the child marriages, looking at that, Do you see
Yeah.
in other cultures? I mean, I'm sure you looked at other cultures and I know you recognize how women are undervalued. Do you see how there's still, even though this isn't a different arranged marriage, there's still cultures that do arranged marriages between, you're going to marry my son. How,
Yes, yes. I see. It's still going on. I will say in a lot of African countries, Africa has like a lot of different countries, but um, mostly in the African country, the child marriages they kind of take place the same way I'm explaining it. That the father will marry off their children to some or whoever has the money or whoever has something that he's looking for, then he sells her off to them. But I know that in Indian cultures, they kind of arrange the marriages that okay, you have a son, I have a daughter, and your son is going to marry my daughter, or my daughter is going to marry your son. The parents kind of talk amongst themselves. The kids might not even want to be together, but if the parents say this is who you are going to marry, it is who you are going to marry. I know it's still happening a lot in the Indian culture. So yeah.
my chiropractor and her husband, they were supposed to marry other people per their family, and they both went to
Oh,
college and they met, and
yeah.
they kept putting off their other prospective
Yeah. The
marriages, and
wedding.
finally they went off and got married.
Okay.
And much to the
Yeah.
disappointment of the family at the time, I mean, now they're all okay and it's all cool, but at the time it was just kind of like,
Yeah.
how dare you?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, in some cultures, that situation, let's say like you are explaining that the two that were supposed to be arranged, that they get married, and they kept postponing it, and they ended up marrying whoever they wanted. In some families, the daughter might be disowned because she refused to marry the person that she was supposed to marry according to her parents. So they might say, I don't want to talk to you anymore. You're not part of this family anymore. But as we progress in life, sometimes they might say, "Oh, okay," they'll get over it in some cases, but in some cases they don't get over it.
I think why they
Yeah.
lucked out is because they were both living in Canada at the time. So the family had
Oh, yeah.
migrated to
So if
Canada, so they had some
yeah,
exposure.
that helps. That helps because if they were still in the country, were they from India
Uh,
or
I,
any Indian
bel
like?
I believe their grandparents were, from what I understand.
Yeah. So if they were living in the country, it might have been a different story. But yeah, the fact that they migrated to Canada, yeah, that makes it much easier, much easier. That's like the same for like Zimbabwean girls. Let's say she happens to go to Canada or to the UK or to the United States, then her chances of getting married off are like zero now because those cultures they don't believe in that. You can actually go somewhere and report that this is what's happening to you and you can be protected. But here in Zimbabwe, the protection is not that great. So although the government said children under 18 are still children and they're not supposed to be married, but the law is not enforced the way it's supposed to be enforced. So it's still happening. It's still happening.
I have this may seem like a bizarre question. So, what are their views on pedophiles? I mean, if you're marrying somebody off that's 12 years old, I mean,
It,
in the
it
United States, that would
It
be,
is. It is. It is. It is. So, in these cultures that are still backwards, that are still believing in those backwards, I don't want to use the word backwards, but that's what it is. In those cultural beliefs, they think that, there's nothing wrong with that. But again, like I said, that, the rest of the country and, most parts of the country, they can actually go to the police and report that someone who is much older was with a girl that's under 18 and they can get in trouble for that. And and again, something that's good is that organizations and companies, they are coming and educating these people that what you are doing is wrong, it's against the law, you are not supposed to do that. and these children are still children. Let them continue with school. And if you marry them, you are breaking the law. You can go to jail for that. So people are really getting in those communities that are still practicing this and educate the parents themselves so that they will know that oh, okay, I can let my child, just because they will be like the gender inequality. They think that the boys are the ones that are supposed to continue with school, whereas the girls are not allowed to continue with school. They have to be married off. So they are being educated that no, girls also have that same rights. They also need to go to school. And you can actually, you know girls can actually become scientists, they can become doctors, they can become whatever they want to become. So the education is happening, but it will take a few years for especially those communities that are like no clue, no clue.
Well, and sitting here listening to you and talking to you, it comes from, I sit to think about a story before my grandmother died, my mom's mom. I
Okay.
sat down with her with a camcorder and I asked her to
Okay.
give me family history. I did it with both my grandmothers, which was an awesome thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember my grandmother actually telling me she was 15 when she met my grandfather,
Okay.
and he was quite
Mm.
older. And they got
Oh,
married pretty
wow.
quick. And her
Yeah.
background was her mother had died after one of her other siblings was born, and I think she was, there was only one or two in her immediate circle, and then she had numerous step siblings. But she told
Okay.
me that my grandfather came to town. She lived in a small town in Louisiana, and he was nice and kind and everything, and she wanted out because she didn't like her stepmother,
Mm.
so she wanted out.
Okay.
So she got out.
Okay.
But when I look at her, the
Yeah.
last grade she went to school at was eighth grade. So my
Okay.
grandmother spent her
Okay.
life as a cashier
Okay.
working in retail
Okay.
because she didn't have an education. She never drove,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
neither one of my
Yeah.
grandmothers. But the fact is, and I said, how could you not drive? Oh, I drove on a dirt road, but she
Oh,
never had a
wow.
license.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's
so I
yeah,
get,
it's so what you are explaining with your grandmother. So this happened, this is like generations before, right? That's
it,
your
it's,
grandmother?
that's my grandma. So it's only, here's the thing. I
It's
guess what I'm getting at is we sit here and think that we've gotten so far removed from this, but we
yeah,
really haven't because I
we
mean,
haven't.
I'll age myself. I'll be 54 in a couple of weeks. So,
Yeah.
or
Oh,
actually
we're the same age.
by this time, by this airs, I will be 54. But so
Okay.
what I'm getting at is, so if you roll this back, I think my grandmother was born in 1920. So
Yeah.
really, we haven't progressed that far.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you look at the
Yeah.
time frame, we have
Yeah.
crawled up and we've managed
Yeah.
to get some of the, but I think there's still one or two laws that allow kids to get married.
Yeah, I think I used to, well, a friend of mine, she got divorced, but back in the 80s, she was married at 16, but it was kind of like an arranged marriage, and she lived in Philadelphia, and her father arranged that she married this pastor of the church at 16, and the guy was 25. He was a pastor he was an assistant pastor of a church, but they got married, and he ended up cheating on her, and but they ended up getting divorced. But now she goes around talking about that. So sometimes you're like, it still happens, in the this is like, not too long ago when she was married off, but the instances are not as huge as other countries. You can count like how many cases of child marriages happen in the United States. You can count, but it's still, it's still a lot of stuff like that happening. Even the sex trafficking, it happens, without people knowing, but it's there.
Yeah.
It's there.
I mean,
Yeah.
people, it's like we think we've progressed, and that's a big thing
Yeah.
lately. We think we've progressed so far, and then it's like lately, dare I say,
Yeah.
the curtain's been pulled back, and it's like, no, folks, we're still here.
Yeah, we still have a long way to go. It's a long way to go. Even what happens in Zimbabwe, sometimes I'm like, wow, this is 2021, and we are still talking about child marriages, and we are still talking about gender inequalities. We are still talking about girl child, that the girls are still being left. This is 2021, but yeah, we have a long way to go. It's a long way to go.
Where do you want your organization to grow? I mean, I know that you have, I know your long-term impact is to get these girls empowered and to change the thinking over there. But how big do you want your organization? Do you want it to just stick in Zimbabwe, or would you like to see this organization grow to try to stop this arranged marriage culture?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I would love my organization to not only grow in Zimbabwe, but to also go. I would love to partner with other people that are in, for example, Zambia, Botswana, South Africa, like the neighboring countries in Zimbabwe, like our neighbors, even other African countries or wherever where this is still happening. I would love to partner and just because the goal is the same, to empower these girls worldwide, and the advantage is that it's a win-win situation. Everybody wins if all the girls are educated and the boys as well. So I would love to see my organization grow to other countries and continue with the work. Continue.
Do you think it's a hidden fact from most people in the West that this is going on? I mean, are most people just blind to it and ignore it, or is it just that not covered in the news?
Think you just said it, it's not covered in the news enough so that people are aware of this whole situation that is still, because a lot of times when I go and like if I go to a networking event or if I'm talking to someone, they ask me what do I do, then I explain. People be like, wow, this is still happening. Yeah, it's still happening. So I think people need to be aware that the problem is still there and we need to do something about it. And it doesn't take much for one girl, especially in the African countries, because when you take a US dollar and use it in any of the African countries, it stretches quite a bit. It goes a long way. So, for example, in Zimbabwe, I'm not sure about other countries, but in Zimbabwe, $300 can keep one girl in school for the whole year. That's going to cover everything that she needs, from school supplies, school uniforms, school fees, and everything that she needs. So only 300, if you compare it with the United States, that's like nothing. You can't do much with $300. But here you can change someone's life, you can impact somebody's life. Somebody's life can be much brighter because of that $300. So
How do you get the fathers to go along with this? The ones,
the fathers in Zimbabwe.
yes. I mean, if the daughter, for how do you find your girls and how do you get the family
Oh,
to go along
okay.
with keeping them in school?
All right. So when I was in Zimbabwe growing up, I didn't even know this teacher, but we grew up in the same community. And when I went to the United States and when I came back with this thought now of my organization, I met this lady. She was now a teacher in one of these communities where most of our girls are from. So we started talking, and I was telling her what I'm thinking about my nonprofit organization. And she said, oh my goodness, I teach at this school and I fight with the parents all the time because they will pull their girls out of school so that they can get married off. So I partnered with this teacher. So now she's the one who identifies the girls that are at the most risk of getting married off. And as soon as we have like a lot of girls that are on waiting lists, and she will, if we get a sponsor or if we raise funds, we have whatever money to pay for someone's fees, she will take from the waiting list and put them in school, sign them up and everything, and boom, she's in school already. So I work with this teacher. She knows the parents of these girls, and she also works with other organizations to put the education to these parents, especially the fathers, so that they know that your girl child is just important as your son child. So yeah, we are teaching the parents, we are teaching the girls as well that you don't have to get married at 14, at 13, at 15. Your job at that age is to continue to go to school, and we will do whatever it takes to raise the money so that you can stay in school. And they love it, they like it.
That's good. That's very good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how we devalue women. My sister-in-law adopted two girls from China. One
Okay.
had a hole in her heart and two holes in her lungs, and then one had a
Oh,
cleft palate. Now,
oh,
because they had these deformities, they were put in an orphanage, and also because they were girls, because
yeah.
there was the rule, so they were not valued well, so they got put in an orphanage. The
Yeah.
one that had the hole in the heart, she's I believe 21 now, but
Okay.
she, because she was so brittle, they just gave her
Yeah.
sugar water to keep her alive, which rotted her teeth out, her baby teeth,
Oh,
and she ended up having to get her adult teeth taken care of. They
oh,
had problems as well. But
okay.
my whole reason for saying this is, once again, we have another culture that looks at
Mm-hmm.
women and devalues
Yep.
them. When did we get to a point that, and we can get into religion, but I'm not really going to go there. I'm just going to say this.
Right.
There were books in the Bible that were written by women, but yet we took those out.
Yes.
Why
Yes.
did we not look at feminine energy as worthy?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
women
Yes.
bring,
I
yes,
mean,
we need a
we
man.
we are powerful.
Yeah, we
We
create
are so
life.
powerful. I usually also, yes, I usually say that, if you put a group of women together, they're non-stoppable. We are positive. We would like to do stuff. If we start something, we make sure it goes on, and and also what I usually say is that with these girls that we empower, um, if you take a boy and a girl, usually if you empower this girl, she's going to be a mother, and she's going to make sure that her children are empowered, her grandchildren are empowered. But if you do the same thing to a boy, in most cases you're just helping him, and once he is successful, it ends there. But with a girl, it doesn't end, it continues, it goes on and on and on. And so we have to empower as many girls as we can, so that we empower them and they become independent, they become self-sufficient. That's all we want for them to do.
The one drawback to the
Yeah.
statement about girls getting together and being, the one drawback, at least here in the United States, and I can be chastised for this, but women like to tear each other apart.
Yeah.
And I've seen that
Yeah.
in school a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
In second
Yeah.
grade, all the
Yeah.
girls, every girl, even if you
Yeah.
weren't involved in this, got pulled in. And our teacher told us, she's
Mm-hmm.
like, girls are
Yeah.
catty. She's like, boys are dogs and
Wow.
girls are
Yeah.
catty, and you guys need to get out of being catty.
Yes. Yes, yes. We have to continue teaching them that, you don't have to pull each other out. It's like so much out there for all of us. We don't need to be jealous of each other. It's so much. It's so much. Even if there's somebody who is doing the same thing that I'm doing, it's not like they're going to take away from me. No, they won't take away from me. So we just have to continue teaching them that we need to work together, we need to empower each other, women helping women, women supporting women, and we continue that way. But it's a process, with like just like everything. Yeah.
Well, and I think the media puts a lot of division, between
Yeah.
sex, race,
Yeah.
everything in there. And
Yeah.
how do you, unless you're stepping away from the drone of that voice, how are you
Yeah.
going to see anything differently?
Yeah. 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 It's hard. It's hard, but we'll continue. We won't get tired
No.
of teaching. We won't get tired. We'll continue on. We'll continue on.
So
Yeah.
what are some success stories from your program?
Wow, I have a lot of success stories.
Give us one or two.
So I have there was one girl that we started off with. She was 14, I believe, and she was just getting into high school. And her father had already found a man that was going to marry her. She was on her way going to this man, and luckily her mother knew of our organization, and she ran to the teacher that I am working with. She told her story that, here's my daughter, she's about to get married off, and we took her, we put her in the program. She continued with school. She finished high school. She went on to college, and she finished her bachelor's in business administration. She went on to her master's degree. She did business finance or something like that, something in business. And while she was in finishing her master's program, she also met her husband, well, her boyfriend then, but uh, they are now married. But she met him when he was also finishing his master's program. They were both finishing up, and they fell in love. They finished their school. They dated for a couple of years, and they finally got married. I was invited to go to the wedding. I was happy, and now she has two sons. I think the older one is about 7 or 8, and the other one, the little one, is about 4. So that's like my best story there. And then I have another. I mean, I have so many stories. So I have another story, same situation, and she finished high school, and she went to college. She completed college, and she just got married last year. Have a son now, and she's working. And all these girls that are now working, they are also kind of paying it forward by helping other girls that are still in high school, that are in the same situation that they were in. So now that they are working, they can also help out. So they are helping other girls as well. So
How,
those
how
are
did
my two favorite.
how did the family feel? Were they at the wedding you got invited
Yeah.
to? It,
Yes, yes, they were. They were. One of the girls, the father was not there, because I think they ended up splitting with the mother, and she went. I think the mother never remarried, but he remarried, so he didn't come, but the mother came, and his siblings came. And the other one, I think her father passed away, so of course he wasn't there, but the mother was there.
I just wonder,
The mother.
do the fathers ever, have you dealt with any of the fathers after the fact, and are they kind of like, thank you for doing what you did? Or I know
That's
the mothers.
that's the funny part, because once the girls put in school, put through school and finish, the father will be like, so how can I say it? He will be like, oh, that's my daughter. Now she is a doctor. Now she is a teacher. But she was about, if no but if anybody didn't come through to put her in school, he wasn't going to put her in school. He was getting ready to send her off to somewhere. But now that she is successful, he wants her to be her daughter now. But we don't say, oh, you can't see your daughter. We don't even go there. We just say, if you want to be part of her life, that's what we want, to put the families together. And they do get together. Rarely, if a few men will be like, it's okay, do what you gotta do. But the mothers, I would say 100% of the mothers are involved with their children, and we get them involved as well. We share with them what's going on with their girls. We share with them the school progress, how the girls are doing in school, and they know what's going on. So
Do you do you ever get to a point where you have somebody that's a father that is fighting you about this, about putting them in school?
we did. We actually did. I think it was several years ago, where the mother was fighting with all her, whatever was in her. She was fighting that her daughter goes to school, but the father was like, "Oh no, I took somebody's money, so she is not going to school. She's going to marry this girl." But it was a long fight. It was a long fight. There was a point where the girl was almost saying, "You know what? Let me just go, because it's not worth all this fighting." But we kept fighting, and she first she went to school, and she dropped out because he kept pulling her out and pulling her out. And then I mean, we never gave up on her. We just continued on fighting for her. But now she is in school. He ended up finding, I think somebody ended up finding some money to give back to the person who gave him the money for this girl. So he paid him off, and then the girl is now able to continue to school, because there's no one who say, "Oh, you took my money and I didn't get the girl. You took whatever, I didn't get the girl." So that was solved. But it took like 2 to 3 years of her, going to school, dropping out, going to school, dropping out. But now she is going to school. So I would say that was one of my hardest, hardest thing to do, to deal with.
The success stories, though,
That's it.
they have to make that kind of story worth it
Yeah.
because
Yes, 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 yes. Many times I'm like, I'm tired of doing this. But when I look at the success stories, I say, there's no way I can stop. I have to keep going. I have to keep going. Yeah. And sometimes there was a time where one girl, this was several years ago, I think it was like 2011 or 2012. One of the girls, she was in the program already. And during the school holidays, she fell in love with a boy also in the community, and she got pregnant, and then she dropped out of school. But after she gave birth, her and her boyfriend, her husband now, um, they worked out a situation where I think she stayed 2 years when she was breastfeeding the baby. Baby was growing, and she went back to school like night. She because now she's a mother, she has to take care of the
right.
child. But she managed to go through high school, and she got a diploma to teach. Here they call it ECD, for where they like kindergarten kind of. So she's teaching kindergarten now.
Nice.
So although it was a bad situation that happened, it ended up being a success, a happy ending, I would say.
How big is your organization? I mean, how many people do you have that help you run it?
On my board, we are 10 people on the board. And most of the people that are on the board, they help contribute annually. And supporters, we have a lot of supporters because all the sponsors that are sponsoring the girls, I call them my supporters, the organization supporters, because they are sponsoring the girls every year. They make sure that whichever girl they sponsor, she goes to school. They pay the $300 every year. So right now we have 85 girls that are in school, and we have 20 girls that already finished and they are out there working or married or did whatever they are doing now. 20 of them are gone, and we have 3 girls that are in college right now, and the rest of them are still in high school. So, but we still have girls on the waiting list waiting for sponsors to come through, and we take them out of the waiting list and put them in the school. um, so my goal for 2021 was to have 100 girls sponsored by 85. I have 15 girls to go. So if somebody's hearing this out there, we still have 15 girls on waiting list. And it's $300 for one girl to stay in school. And we just want people to make a commitment so that, because if you pay 1 year, that might put her in school for 1 year. What about next year? So it has to be at least a 4 year commitment where you will pay to make sure that she stays in school for to finish at least high school. And after high school, she can choose to go to college, and we continue with the fundraising events so that we keep them in college. And some girls will go to technical school where they can do culinary school, and they become chefs, or they can do whatever, whatever they want to do in technical schools. So that's our goal. That's our wish for 100 girls by end of this year.
Do your sponsors get an introduction to them? How does that work for your sponsors? Do they get a
Yes.
picture, an image, and a bio and stuff, or how does that work?
Absolutely. So as soon as somebody says, I'm going to sponsor a girl, we take the girl from the waiting list. I take a picture of the girl. We have a story because the teacher that is selecting these girls, like who is at the most risk, she knows their stories already. So she will make a bio for the girl, and the sponsor will get the picture, the bio, and the school progress throughout the year. The sponsor will get all that. And we don't say, if you want to communicate with the girl or with the teacher, a lot of our sponsors and our supporters that are sponsoring the girls, they have the teacher's phone number where they can call or text and say, how is Anne doing? How is Margaret doing? And they communicate. She will tell her that, oh, she's doing great in school. And they were on lockdown. They just went back to school beginning of end of September because they were on lockdown for maybe like what, 6 weeks. They were on lockdown, so the girls were home, and so now they are okay. They are back in school. So the teacher communicates with all the sponsors and tell them what's going on.
So that's a good question. There is for them, was lockdown remote learning, or was lockdown just nothing?
It was nothing, but for the other, which is again, the inequality of things happening, because the girls that are in towns where there's electricity, they have everything, they can be online. But what about these girls that are in the rural areas where there's no electricity, there's no Wi-Fi, they can't be online. So they were just reading their books, and the teachers would try to give them homework to do. They try to keep them busy so that they won't be out there roaming around. So it was a difficult time for the teachers and for the students as well. um, but they hung in there. Thank God we didn't have any girl in our program who got pregnant, but other girls, because they were home doing nothing, and the boys were home also doing nothing, we had a few girls that became pregnant um, during the lockdown. So
Things happen.
yes, things
Things,
happen.
yeah, it's interesting because some people, I mean, I know some places in the United States, there are still people that don't have electricity and Wi-Fi, which I know seems,
Yeah,
people are like, no, that's not,
yeah,
that wouldn't be the case. But we don't, once
right.
again, it goes back to how things are portrayed. Things are portrayed that
Yes.
everybody's got Wi-Fi, everybody's doing well.
No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Nope. A lot of girls, in the rural areas, they don't have electricity, so there's no Wi-Fi at all. Even at my school, they have electricity at the school, but at the homes where they live, they don't have electricity. At the school, they don't have Wi-Fi. If you need Wi-Fi, you have to purchase it yourself. So the teacher that I work with, she has her own Wi-Fi so that she can communicate with people, and she can communicate with me. If she has a girl that, whatever is going on, she has to have access to call me or to be on Zoom and tell me what's going on. So she has to pay for the Wi-Fi.
And that this is a, and I'm not defending anybody's choice here, but this also
Yeah.
kind of paints a picture of why some fathers are so desperate to do this with their
Yeah.
girls.
Yeah, absolutely. You're very right. Very right. Because the main thing why they're doing this is just due to poverty. It's due to poverty. Because sometimes you'll be like, okay, I have five kids. How do I feed them? I'm not working. There's nothing. So if I marry off this girl, maybe I'll get 10 cows, and then at least I'll have something to I can sell five of the cows. Maybe I can slaughter one and get the meat for the family. So everything is just due to poverty. It's not like they just want to, sell off their daughters, no. But it's due to what's going on in the families most of the time.
I think that's, and like I said, I'm not excusing what they're doing, but I think it's a bigger
Right.
picture. I remember, and this, some people are going to get mad at me for this, when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, the media
Mm.
painted it as a very racial thing. My grandmother,
Yeah.
had she not been in the hospital at the time, she would have been
Okay.
at her apartment. And I don't know what would have
Oh.
happened because half her wall was gone in her apartment.
Oh my gosh.
And
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, this is a woman who was
Uh,
getting roughly $600 a month to live on.
right.
And this
Right. Right.
is 19, well,
Yeah. Katrina happened. I
actually it
think
was
I remember Katrina.
2005.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so not that that's, I mean, that's still, you wouldn't think somebody could live on $600, and she really wasn't. She was getting help.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is,
Right.
it was a poverty thing. The income in New
Yes.
Orleans
Yes. Yes.
is not typical where it's a very wealthy
Right.
community.
No,
But
it's not.
we
It's not.
paint, instead of looking at the socioeconomic of poverty, we have to
Yeah.
give you some kind of image, a visual.
Yes. 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 Absolutely. I agree. Absolutely.
And I'm not detracting. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to bring race into it. I think
I
really
hear
when you
you.
dig down, it's about poverty, and poverty is across the world. And I
It's
was
everywhere. Yeah.
I was looking, I was on Twitter this morning. They were talking about the, I believe, Panama Papers, and how
Okay.
trillions of dollars have been put aside offshore
Right.
accounts by presidents, kings, princesses,
Yeah.
celebrities,
Mm-hmm.
companies. That's all
Yeah.
tax free. That could fix a
Mm.
lot of these problems.
Yes, 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 yes. When you look at, even in Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe is not like a big country, but sometimes like the economical situation of the some people are like very rich, and then when you look at the poor, they are like really poor. But if you take it, it wouldn't take a lot of money to make at least everybody be at a comfortable situation where everybody has at least something to eat every day, at least electricity in their homes and stuff like that. So, I
That's
guess
what
it is what it is.
it always cracks me up that you have these politicians spending how much money on political
Yeah.
ads that if you actually took that money
Yes.
and helped people, the
Yep.
word of mouth would go
Mm-hmm.
around and help you
Yes.
versus the wasting of money
Yes.
on things that we don't want to see.
Yes, 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 yes. Even at the school that I'm working with, I'm trying to have like a functional library, but it doesn't take much. I'm like, oh wow, if even one minister, if they take not even $1 million, like quarter of $1 million, the whole school could be like, fabulous. Everything will be working well. They will have a functional library. They can put electricity there, but they 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 will think that it's not important, driving $2 million cars would be more important than building a school. So,
And the thing about that is you can't take the money with you.
right,
So
right, right, right.
wouldn't it be
It
better to be,
stays here.
yeah,
Once you are gone, you go 6 feet under, like the poor person that you were looking down upon. So,
I just,
yeah,
I mean, poverty is a huge issue. And I know that's not really what we're talking
yeah.
about, but in a roundabout way, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is because all this is, starts with poverty. So, and also what we are doing, we are trying to end the cycle of poverty because, like I said earlier, the mothers were child brides and they know what they went through. So that's why they don't want their children to go through the same thing. So we are trying to break that cycle of poverty that if we educate these girls, their daughters are going to be educated, obviously, and their granddaughters, and it goes on and on and on. So
And back to my grandmother, because I did live with my grandmother and my mom at one point after my mom divorced. My mom got married at 18. So
okay.
when I was in high school, there was part of me that was just like, I was bored. I could have dropped out, but I was
Yeah.
bound and determined to break that cycle. Just like I was bound and
Yes.
determined not to get married in my teens. And I didn't. I got married in my 20s.
Yes.
But I was bound. You have to
Yes.
consciously want to break that cycle of the ancestry
Yes.
because
Yes.
whether we
Yes.
admit it or not, there's a generational thing that we see,
Mm-hmm.
we learn, and then
Yeah.
we repeat. We have to break
Yes.
it.
Yes. Yes, yeah, it happens because, like, even these girls, if they saw their mothers being mothers at 15, so they are not too far apart. So she'll be like, okay, I'm 15 too. My mother had a child when she was 15. So maybe that's what I need to do as well, because that's what she did. If she doesn't know any better, if nobody comes in and tell her that, no, you don't have to go through what your mother went through. So she most likely she's going to follow that path until she gets to a point where she will say, no, I'm going to break this cycle and do something different. Yeah.
And I think that's in the United States. I think that has happened a lot. I think a lot of,
Mm,
especially like the newer, younger generations, they're like, I don't want to have kids.
yeah.
I don't want to do
Yeah.
this. I don't want to get married. I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
you can see the
Yeah.
generational change, and hopefully, because we're making the changes here, it kind of bleeds
Yeah.
off across the
It
world.
will right. That's we are hoping for. Yeah. If it starts there and it spreads out to other countries, if people see what they are seeing, they'll be like, oh, okay, we can do the same thing too. So we are hoping that will happen. We are hoping.
So, anything you want to talk else you want to add about your journey or what you're doing?
Just want people to be aware that this is going on. And again, like I said earlier, it doesn't take much to help somebody who is less fortunate. And sometimes we think that we are helping this girl, but we are also helping ourselves. It gives us a sense of help that we are doing something better, something good for the whole world, not just for this particular person, but for the whole world. It makes the world better because we are educating these girls. So I just want, because my biggest problem is to make sure that people are aware of the situation, because once we are aware, we can do something about it. Just like I was aware of it and I did something about it. But again, I cannot do this by myself. I usually tell people about, I love proverbs. So there's an African proverb that I like a lot. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others. So, it simply means that, if I wanted to do it by myself, I would just probably help one girl or maybe two girls. But now I'm at 85 girls that I'm helping, but I'm not doing this by myself. I have a whole, group team of people that are helping me. So I'm going with others and we are helping more. And we are still looking for more people to come and join us and continue to help these girls. So, let's go together and continue to do the good work.
Well, I thank you for your time, and your message is wonderful. And I wish you much success in your journey. So Bongai had a lot to say about child marriages and the fact that we delve into poverty, and even in our own history in the United States. As I stated, we're not that far removed. I mean, my grandparents, as much as I love my grandmother and my grandfather, there was an age difference and he was older. So it is, not that it's happened recently, but I'm sure it still does. There's certain aspects where a girl wants to get out of a relation, get out of her parents' house, and lo and behold, she falls into the situation. Children should not be pawns to get married. They should be able to make their own choices. While we have a lot more freedoms in this country, there are still some laws in the books that allow for children to be married off with parental consent. It's time that women start supporting one another and start embracing who we are and the power that we have. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that, there's no use for guys, because that's not the case. But I think we really do need to look at the feminine power. And I'm sorry, guys, if that ticks you off, but I think women are pretty darn strong. We create life. Yes, we have your help, but we carry life. So I think it's time that, we look at women on an equal playing field. Guys can do things that women can't, and women can do things that guys can't. And that's okay. But we can also be equal. We can also be supportive of one another. And it's the same thing. Women can support women and men can support men. And we need to be more openly emotional and openly feeling. We don't have to have such a hate and division in the world. We can actually live and coexist. If we can fight things such as poverty and give people a fighting chance to have a life, we'd be in a much better place. So I thank you for tuning into the Better Two podcast. If you would like to support or sponsor, if you would like to support her foundation, the American African Youth Leadership Foundation, I will have a link in the bio notes. And, it would help in some child marriages. And one person that ends up getting an education can change somebody else's life. As I stated in the podcast, I made a conscious choice not to do the same things that my grandmother did or that my mom did. I made different choices. And by giving someone an education, you're empowering them to do that. So I hope you've enjoyed the show. I thank you. If you like the show, please tell your friends. If you want to review the show, please do so on Apple or whatever podcast subscription service you subscribe to. If you want to send me an email, please do so. It's Donna at better2podcast.com. That's DAUNA. And all the links are in the bio to follow us. If you want to watch it on YouTube, you can. Once again, thank you for enjoying the show, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. You are listening to the Better Two podcast with DM Needham.